So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to today's session. My name is Casper Bartington, and I am APM's Head of Volunteer and Education Engagement. And I'm delighted to be joined today by two of our APM members, Dr. Callum Kidd, who is a Fellow of APM who works at the University of Manchester, and Ritu Kansal, who's a Member of APM who works at University of London. Now, what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk briefly about APM for those of you who are unaware of us. I will then talk briefly again about APM membership, and then I'll hand over to Callum and Ritu to each describe their journeys towards membership and the benefits that it brings. There'll be plenty of time at the end of the session to take your questions and any clarifications you may have, and then we will wrap up at about 1:30. So without any further ado, I'm going to give a brief introduction. We will then carry on, and I'll be monitoring the questions as we go through. So for those of you who don't know who we are, APM stands for the Association for Project Management. We're a chartered body for the project profession, and we've got 30,000+ individual members, and we've got several hundred corporate members. And for me, professional bodies are really about helping our members build their knowledge and build their networks, whether they work in construction and engineering, those two heartlands of the project profession, or whether they work in financial services consultancy, or of course higher education. Now, in terms of APM's membership, we've got a number of different levels that are available. So the student members are a lot of students at university, apprentices, and the like. And then we have this, like any good professional body, we've got this pathway through to the top. And MAPM is the designation for those who are members of APM, and it's quite well known across the project profession. Callum, as you may have noticed, is a fellow, so you can put FAPM after his name. And for those of you who want to go further or who may already be there, and we have chartered status as well. But I'm not going to talk about that in great detail because I want to really hand over to our guests very shortly. If you're not familiar with the APM website or you've forgotten where to go, if you want to find out more about all the levels of membership that APM has, this is the URL to go to. It will take you to a landing page, and then at the bottom of this slide you can see the different levels of membership that are applicable for you. So if you're a newbie to project management, you might find that associate level's right for you. If you've got that 3 to 5 years experience in a qualification, membership might be right for you. If you're highly experienced and want to give something back, then perhaps fellowship's right for you. But there are a number of different ways to get to our membership level, and I think it's important to just spend a minute talking about this, because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach in the sense that everyone has the same qualification and everyone has the same amount of experience. On here, I've explained those key differences between experience and qualifications. So just as someone can become a chartered project professional and base that on their experience, so somebody can get to full membership of APM and base that on their experience. Equally, you can mix your experience with your qualifications, or you can take a qualification. So there are a number of different ways that you can get to this membership level, and that's all available on our website. When you go to membership, it will explain all those in great detail. But what I really wanted to do before handing over to Callum is just make it crystal clear that to become a member of APM as a MAPM, yes, we would expect lots of people to be practitioners to do that, but I want to be clear that academics are perfectly able to become members of APM as well. And within our guidance notes, I've just cropped it here and then copied and pasted it onto this slide. There's some very clear guidelines about what we would expect you to do when it comes to writing your application. So some professional bodies, there's a sense that you have to be in practice to become a member. It's not that way for APM, and we welcome academics joining our profession and building their knowledge, sharing their knowledge, of course, and building and sharing their networks as well. So that's a very quick introduction, and of course you're welcome to go off onto the APM website to find out a bit more about the process of becoming a member. But what I really want to do now is hand over to my two guests today, because that's why you're here. So if we kick off with Callum, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Callum, and then walk through your journey towards becoming a fellow and, of course, being a member of APM, and just describe some of the benefits of what those are for you, and then we'll turn to Ritu and do the same thing there. So Callum, over to you.
Thank you very much, Casper. As Casper said, my name's Callum Kidd. I am the discipline head of education for project management at the University of Manchester. And part of my role is the strategic development of what we teach in project management and how we teach. That's been an interesting journey over a couple of years, but I think the recent pandemic has taught us that in all projects, whether they're industry, business, or academic, we've got to be able to respond quicker and effectively to stakeholders and to the client. And that has really been a major drive within the university system. And I think that it's made the university system realize how important projects are. So the one positive thing perhaps that's come out of the pandemic from my perspective is that at Manchester, we now start to talk an awful lot about projects, which is really good. But obviously, it benefits us as a professional body, but it also makes the academic community realize how important projects are. I like to think of myself as an academic practitioner. I know it doesn't fall very well into the slide that Casper showed you before, but I think that as an academic, most of my peers are actively engaged in either advisory roles or research roles or education and training roles outside of the university as well as inside. I came from what is now maybe a less traditional path, but when I entered academia way back in the 1990s, it was probably the norm in things like project management, that I'd worked in project management before I came back to teach. I worked in a number of aerospace organizations. I worked in a lot of different types of projects, from R&D type projects to major deliverables like Eurofighter, Typhoon. And that to me was a great grounding as an academic, because it gives you context. And I firmly believe that projects are all about context. And when you come to teach anything in terms of managing projects, it's always useful for you and for the students to be able to relate back to tangible things. And that was a great advantage for me. I still keep very close contact with industry. I work with quite a few major industry clients in advisory capacities. So I tend to think of myself as an academic practitioner. And it's useful really to be able to wear two hats. And I think any academic colleagues that are out there today will probably be able to identify the fact that some days you're in a classroom with students, and other days you're in industry or in commerce with people that are very much a practitioner base. It's very different to teach. It's very challenging to teach both environments, but it's very enriching. That's one of the things that I tend to like more about my job, that it's diversity. Some days I'm teaching undergraduate students, some days I'm teaching people that have a lot more practitioner experience than I do. And the difference of being able to engage at different levels is a real challenge for academics, but it's part of an enriching environment. And I think that the world of projects has changed an awful lot in academia. From a teaching perspective, we've gone in the last 20 or 30 years from teaching little bits of courses to having a lot of master's degrees, and even some undergraduate programs now are becoming very visible and accepted in project management. But it wasn't that long ago that we used to teach planning and control, or we used to teach project costings. So it's not beyond most of our lifetimes that in the academic world, we were seen as part of something else. And I think that one of the most important shifts that we've had in academia, certainly in the last decade, is that we are seen as being mainstream. We're being seen as people that deliver project management courses, not just individual units on other courses. And I think that's a huge transition for us. And I think it's one of the reasons that we're starting to see more and more academics now that relate to being project managers. 10, 15 years ago, when I joined full-time academic teaching in the mid-1990s, a lot of my peers were engineers that taught project management or IT professionals that taught project management. Now, with chartership coming through from APM, we're starting to see people that identify themselves as being project professionals within our units, and that's a great leap forward. I'm all in favour of that. I think it's long past time that we did that, but in the academic world, we are now finding a lot of academics that are project managers, both in teaching and in research and in practice. I know that there's a lot of people that work in professional project roles, and that's something we're going to explore later on. But from a teaching perspective, I think we're coming into our own. What I would like to see is more people that teach in project management become more involved in APM as our professional body. It's really important as an academic that you can align to your professional body. And what I want to actively encourage everybody is to recognize APM as your professional body. I know a lot of us are engineers and probably members of engineering council organizations as well, but it's really important that we have a voice. I know that higher education and further education is not a huge representative group in APM, but maybe that's our fault. And I think that if we're going to have a bigger voice in the shaping of the profession for us as academics, then we need to stand up. And we can only do that if we become members. And I think that professional membership allows us so many other opportunities as an academic body that we wouldn't have through other bodies or by not being members of anything. I personally have met lots and lots of people that have helped deliver my courses through APM, just in meetings like this, just in conversations. I know when we get, it's difficult at the moment, but when we get back to face-to-face type meetings, I've made so many contacts with people that have been delighted to come and speak to students. And I think that that's really what the relationship between a professional body and an academic body should be. It should be seen as running in the same direction, should be running the same path, but it's opportunities for both. And one of the things that I'm a little bit disappointed with over the years is the lack of colleagues at Manchester that in the past have not taken up the opportunity to become members. But all it takes is for one or two of you to be members and to demonstrate to colleagues how important it is, and people follow suit. I know recently that 3 of my colleagues have applied for membership just in the last 3 months. And that's because they started to see now how important it is to be engaged and how important it is to be qualified in your area. So it's positive and it's moving, but the only people that can really move this are the academics themselves. So it's really important that we take up the challenge. It's really important that we take up the opportunities. And I think that one of the other positive things in having qualified members of staff in the academic institutions is that it demonstrates to students how important it is to be professionally qualified. I had a long engagement with Casper last year in what student membership would mean to our students. And it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. Being a student member costs the students nothing other than 10 minutes to fill in the membership form. And in return, the students get access to a wealth of knowledge, as well as a copy of the body of knowledge, which we use quite extensively for things like courseworks. But that's another level of engagement. And I think that once the students see that their academic staff are members, they start to ask more about APM. once they see that we are members or fellows or chartered, I know that a couple of my colleagues are now either chartered or on that journey, it allows the students to see that there is a pathway beyond the academic world. So when I qualify, when I graduate with my degree, how do I carry on? What's after my MSc or my BSc that I've done here? And a lot of that is not, it's not done by direct communication. It's done by visual communication. I have the APM logo on a lot of my slides. I certainly have it on the introduction slide to all the units that I teach. And I think it's really important that as a group, we demonstrate our allegiance to a professional body, but also to the students in terms of lifelong learning. One of the big drives at the University of Manchester, and I'm sure at the University of London and other academic institutions across the country, is the opportunities to engage in lifelong learning. I'd love to have more and more students come back post-graduation. So 20s and 30s, 40s, 50-year-olds. I'm in my 50s, and I realize in my 50s how little I do know. And it's really interesting that sometimes you have to go back to basics. Sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board and think, what else is there that I can teach? What don't I know? Not what do I know? Engaging in professional bodies allows us access to people that we would not normally have access to. I've really enjoyed over the years APM conferences and workshops, just to touch base with people that I probably wouldn't meet in my daily, every day, every week life. And I think that being a member of an academic body, part of our remit should be engagement. And if we're not engaging with our professional body, there's something seriously wrong. So I would actively encourage anybody out there to go out and find more understanding and more knowledge about APM and what it can do for you. The fact that you're a member adds value to APM, but you've got to ask yourself, what am I missing? And I think that as academics, one of the things that we miss a lot is engagement with a vast group of stakeholders that can add tremendous value. The full-time program, MSc program that we have at Manchester is huge. It has been as high as 420 students. This year, we've got a much more manageable 317. And of course, we're delivering at a distance. But the value that we've added this year by, I tried to enforce every student to join APM as a student member, but of course we fell foul of the system. You can't make people do things. But what we did was we showed people the value. And when we put up 2 slides with the aid of the local, that's another thing I didn't mention, was that we have good engagement with the local branch. And the local branch came in and did an introduction session of why it's important for you as students to be members. And once we did that and we showed what they get for free, of course, then we had a huge take-up. But I would like the branch to come in and do similar to the university, to my colleagues, and say why it's important for you to become a member. Because I think that, again, it's a no-brainer. Most universities will pay for a professional membership in at least one body. If you get the opportunity to have your membership paid, I don't understand why anybody wouldn't take up that opportunity. It is a value-added activity. And over the years, my involvement with APM has been varied. I'll be honest with you. I've engaged sometimes more than I have in other times. But what it's taught me is that the more that I engage, the more I get out of it. And I know that's common sense. But there is much more to be gained in being a member than in not being a member. The last point I want to make is that part of my remit at Manchester from a strategic point of view is the development of staff. And quite a few times when I've engaged with people over the last 12 to 18 months with colleagues on being a member of APM, they have in their mind that they can't be a member because they're not a practitioner. I enjoy the fact that I see myself as an academic practitioner, but a lot of my colleagues have become academics through other routes. So they don't see themselves as being a project management professional. And you know, the reality is that they are, because they're running projects every day. And when you point out to people the extent of what we manage as a project, you realize that as an academic, we're running projects as part of everything that we do. We run research projects. Every unit that we deliver year in, year out is a project. Every unit that we develop and enhance at the end of every academic cycle is a project. So there's so many things that we do, and Caspar very kindly put up the slide there to show that there is a professional and an academic route. I think we need to openly encourage our academic colleagues to look at what they do and reflect on, am I a project professional? And I think they are project professionals. It's an academic perspective, but let's not diminish the role that we have, that we are all experienced project managers in running projects at different levels and different degrees of complexity as part of our everyday job. And because I've worked in project management outside of academia, I really don't think that what I do now is a million miles away from what I did working with major contractors in the defense industry. The timescales are longer, perhaps in industry, but the complexity of what we do and what we deliver is the same. So don't be discouraged as academics that APM is just for working professionals in the project profession. You are part of the project profession, and you are project professionals. It's just that the projects that you manage are academic projects, not software projects or hardware projects or internet projects.
So that was so very interesting, and I absolutely agree with what you've mentioned about the project professional encompassing different genres of projects, academic and, as a practitioner, so whether it's software engineering or, defense projects. So in my role with the University of London as senior project manager, I lead on a number of strategic projects. Most recent projects have included transition to remote working during the pandemic and leading on a customer service excellence accreditation for the University of London's distance and flexible learning arm. Now, it is interesting. A colleague from the Learning Enterprise Advisor Network asked me yesterday, what advice would I give a young professional entering my profession, i.e. project management? And my response was similar to what I am responding to you in response to your question, Caspar, and which is applicable to project professionals at all levels. Now, being part of a professional body gives credibility to your skills, knowledge, and specialism. And as Caspar mentioned, it also makes you part of a group and gives you access to that lifelong learning and engagement, which has very much the case in terms of my personal experience as well. My APM membership journey started with completing APM's well-rounded project management qualification that suits the variety of projects I engage with in the ever-evolving higher education sector. And I have found that the higher education sector is not a traditionally academic sector as it used to be maybe 20 or 30 years ago. It is evolving to encompass different routes, different pathways, different student expectations in terms of where they would like to go as practitioners themselves. I must say I really enjoyed engaging with the APMP qualification because it was so common sense and had common ground for projects I have led within the University of London. And as a member of APM, I have continued to enjoy access to the latest developments and insights, lifelong learning, and also things that are really current. Most recently, engaging in a neuroscience approach to project management. To highlight some nuances of my personal experience, I have enjoyed 2 careers within higher education, in leading partnerships and in project management. The project management role came about based on my experience in overseeing international partnerships and transferable skills, very much akin to project management. So as Callum mentioned, there were elements of projects and managing projects, even though I was working in international partnerships. And when I was embarking on my project management role, I saw the potential for joining a professional body to connect myself with the project profession. Hence, the common ground aspect helped. The APM membership was an attractive prospect as it offered very practical resources that I can pick and implement in my own work quite easily. At the same time, I like the idea of connecting with other professionals and share good practice with them. So in a nutshell, APM membership has acted as an anchor for me in the early days of my project management career and continues to be an integral aspect of my professional identity and project practice. At present, within the University of London, we have an increasing number of colleagues who are now opting for APM membership, APM qualifications, and the university is a corporate member of APM as well. And we come together as project professionals, as a community of project practitioners within the university. We share lessons learned, we discuss good practice, and there's a lot of knowledge sharing and engagement happening through that platform. And I must say that APM resources are something that we do refer to again and again, and that does provide us with a sound reference point when we are looking at projects in different areas, including capital projects, including building works around the University of London in the Bloomsbury area, as well as strategic projects such as my own projects. So it is absolutely invaluable.
Okay, thanks very much, Ritu, for that. So the sound gremlins are still defeating us at the moment. So we have had a couple of questions come through the chat, but let's deal with some of those. So before I reach out to those questions, just bear with me and I will get to them. Sorry, just bear with me. So yes, that's from a student. So what I wanted to ask you was among your colleagues, just give us a sense of how well known. I mean, I guess the ethos of professional body membership and how well known APM is among your project professional colleagues. Ritu first, and then Callum will come over to you.
Okay, so absolutely. I mean, we at the University of London, we have encouraged colleagues and staff to sign up to professional bodies. We actively support that, and through our organizational staff development unit. And APM is something that has gained a lot of traction over the last couple of years. And this has been seen as of being of value, especially as we have worked into different ways of working and evolving as an organization as well. So APM, I think one of our first steps to creating awareness about APM was signing up to the corporate membership, and then encouraging colleagues at the university to sign up as individual members. We created a lot of awareness about the events that APM was hosting. So the webinars have been great. And as colleagues signed up to those, they realized that there was a lot of interesting resource available through APM that they could access. And so that was sort of the trajectory for us to get people on board.
Thank you. So that's the practitioner perspective. Callum, from your side as an academic, just tell us about attitudes towards professional bodies and APM in particular.
As academics, we are very focused on professional body recognition. I'm in the School of Engineering at the University of Manchester, and of course we have very strong accreditation of chartered engineering bodies. And over the years, we've seen a more defined growth of project management with APM as being aligned to what we do with the other chartered engineering bodies. So we're seeing more and more acceptance outside of our project group in the fact that there is a project management body out there and it is now chartered. And I think that level of acceptance has elevated us in terms of recognition extensively over the last few years. Our association with APM goes back a long way. I was brought into Manchester to design and deliver an MSc program with industry in 2000. And we were the first MSc program to be accredited by APM in 2002. So we go back, our association goes back a long way, but we made a decision early on, way back in the early 2000s, that it was really important for us as an academic body to align with the professional body. And over the years, we've had very successful interactions with APM. We won the Geoffrey Trimble Award for Best Dissertations 6 times in 10 years. And that was largely down to the fact that along with a group of APM practitioners from the local branch, we developed a practitioner routeway for the MSc dissertations, and we based it on reflective practice. So we broke the mold of the traditional MSc dissertations by developing a professional practitioner perspective, but we made successful engagement with members of the local branch to not only work on the development of that, but also work on the development of the assessment of that. We had, in the last 5 years, a unit that we developed on the full-time MSc, the introductory unit, where again we engaged with the local branch, but we instead of an assessment based on an examination, we had students work in teams to deliver videos, and it was a video of an actual project. So they had to develop a multimedia presentation as groups. Now the guy that led that development won an award from the British Academy of Management 2 years ago for being highly innovative and engaging with the professional community. So we go back a long way, and I think that the understanding of how important APM has been strong within our unit for some time. But I think it's starting to filter through to the rest of the School of Engineering that it's not just a fringe association of project professionals. It is now a well-established, well-formed, well-managed, chartered body that recognises the needs of the development of the project community. And I think that has been the biggest breakthrough that we've seen, and certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, is that even though we as project professionals have been long supporters of APM, I find that my colleagues at senior levels across the other engineering disciplines are now recognising that APM is a player. They're an equal player in that playing field. And just to possibly support that, we went through our re-accreditation last year with the professional engineering bodies. And in one of the accreditations, it's civil engineering. So civil engineering, RICS, chartered surveyors. It was written in the report that it was promising and encouraging that the units that we had, that we delivered for the civil engineering degree, were delivered by people that had a professional qualification with APM. So I think that's highly positive. I think it puts us on the map that it's not just a community of practice. It's a chartered professional body that has equal status to other chartered bodies.
Thanks, Callum. Anything to add on that, Ritu, from a practitioner point of view within HE?
I think absolutely agree that the fact that APM is a chartered body, that actually goes a really long way to create that sense of credibility for each of the project professionals within the university. Because I think project management within academia is not unusual, but I think it's only now there's an increasing recognition that we do work of projects. Each task or an element of what we are delivering within the university, especially when it comes to delivering new things, especially in the past year where we've had to adapt our delivery, assessments and teaching delivery to cater to the online environment. Those have been projects led by project managers. And that has actually created that realization that, right, this is something that can be looked at in that way. And that's where the value of APM comes in. So if you are a project professional investing in your membership with a professional body such as APM, that does give you a bit more gravitas in terms of delivering your projects, and gives you again, reiterating credibility of how you are seen, not only within the higher education sector but also outside of the HE sector.
Okay, thanks very much both. I mean, from your perspective, Ritu, to start with, how have you seen the evolution, if you like, of projects and project management within HE as a practitioner over the last 5 to 10 years?
I would say over the last 5 years, definitely project management has become an integral feature of the higher education working environment. And project management, I think prior to that, was maybe associated more with IT projects, but it's gone beyond that. So as I mentioned, I am more of a strategic project manager, and I work with delivering a lot of operational aspects within the higher education environment. And some of that has also included inclusion projects. So there's a whole plethora and diversity of projects that have now been recognized as being part of that project portfolio. And so in the last 5 years and 10 years, I think there's also an increasing recognition of cross-fertilization of ideas. And so I have found personally as a practitioner, we are employing the matrix project management system to ensure that we can get appropriate colleagues' input from various departments and various units, and it's not restricted to a single project team. So I have a different project team for my different projects. And so that level of engagement is higher than it's ever been before in my experience. What do you think, Callum?
No, I think that's very true. I think one of the most challenging things that we've had in project management in the University of Manchester for the last few years is that we've had a rapid expansion of new buildings. So we've all of a sudden now found that there's project managers everywhere. Across the whole of the University of Manchester. It's a bit like the NHS. 30 years ago, there was no project managers in the NHS. And now, if you look at the NHS, there's probably more project managers than there is in most other organizations, because they identify a lot of what they do as projects. But we, as a School of Engineering, have a new building. And we were supposed to move in last summer. Then, of course, COVID came along and we didn't. But it's been a plethora of information for us to give to students that we actually have a live project for the students to look at. And we've done really well with getting the contractors and the stakeholders in that project to come and do presentations for undergraduate and postgraduate students. So it's really great for the students that they can see something tangible, they can see something physical as a construction, and understand the principles of what they're learning from books in practice. And I think that's been really positive for us. But I've noticed across the university that the term project manager in Rita's world, where you know we have people that aren't the academics, but they're managing projects in the academic community, I've seen that grow extensively. And maybe over the last 5 years, I've noticed more and more emails I get from people where their job title is now project manager. So it's a big eye opener for us, but I think it's supportive of the fact that project management's here to stay, and it's a profession. As I say, I'm old now. I mean, I'm in my late 50s, but I can remember where it was engineers that ran projects. And when I first started in industry in the 1980s, it was very much in aerospace that we had professional engineers that ran a project. And now, of course, that shift has changed, that we've got professional project managers that run projects. And I think that that's finally filtered through into the academic communities, that academics don't run infrastructure projects in academia. It would be a terrible world if me and my colleagues had to project manage the construction of a new school of engineering. You know, that is the job of a professional project manager that comes from an infrastructure or civils background. But it's great for us to be able to demonstrate to students that this is learning in action. This is what you're walking past. When you get the bus into the lecture area every week for your undergraduate lecture, your bus actually passes the construction site of our new School of Engineering. And it's become a great talking point. It's become a great figure piece for us to say, you know, and be honest with the students that, you know, we've hit a problem. And one of the problems at the moment is a contractor problem or a subcontractor problem. And then we get people to come in and talk to the students about those real life problems. So it's been fantastic for us. But one of the things I find really interesting about academics is that we don't often see what we do as a project. I had a conversation on Friday last week with a senior colleague, and the discussion was, is the delivery of a course every year a project, or is it operations? And this colleague was adamant that because we deliver the same unit at the same time with basically the same content, even though it's updated every year, it's an operation. And the reality is it isn't. It has all the holes of a project. It has a beginning and end point. It has stakeholders. It has a strategy. It has a plan. It has scope. It has everything that a project has.
I agree, Callum. And it's also one of the other things with the beauty of, you know, having the project management profession within HE recognized as such as you have your requirements. So your student requirements wouldn't be the same. And similarly, you know, your infrastructure projects, you know, each of your buildings is going to have different requirements. Similarly, you would have different lessons learned as well. And so any task or piece of work or action you deliver to has a start and an end, and it has you know, and then it goes into the business as usual, depending on what it is, but it very much has the hallmarks of a project.
It does, but I mean, you mentioned there business as usual. If the one thing that we have learned from the lockdown and from the pandemic, if the one thing we walk away with is the fact that there is no business as usual, then that's a positive outcome. And I think that what it's taught us as an institution is that if we look at all our courses as being projects, we manage them as projects. and we respond to change in the same way we would for any project. The one killer in any academic environment is looking at things as an operation. Because if we ran the courses this year in the same way that we have for the last 20 years, we would not be here today.
And so that there is that element of adaptability. Absolutely. You know, that that project management approach allows you to have. So if you look at something as a project, you have a certain level of control, but at the same time, you can look at your requirements and see what needs to be adjusted, and do you need to actually, you know, does it mean something, you know, what is the implication for the scope of the project?
Absolutely.
And so it is actually that common sense ground that I mentioned in my introduction that project management offers, but specifically the APM qualification, I think very much offered, because it gives you that methodology that can translate to most environments and most projects. And I have found that to be such a gem in my own practice as a project manager, where I revisit the methodology, the project management methodology, which, if you look at it as a philosophy, you have your value set, you have your set of tools, but the outcomes can be very different, and what you're working to can be very different, but the principles can be quite similar in terms of what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely right.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Callum, and thanks very much, Ritu, for that. Time, I think, to close the session. But thank you very much for sharing your time this afternoon with us. I've no doubt that we'll have a follow-up session where we can have a bit more engagement with our audience. The gremlins have beaten us today, but I'm going to draw the recording to a close now. Thank you again very much for your time, and I hope to speak to you again very soon indeed. So, Ritu, Callum, thank you.
Thank you, Casper.